Hey everybody, this is Cameron from Noxious Anonymous. Today I'm once again joined by James. And over the airwaves we have Christian, aka Trichome. How's it going?
Pretty good, pretty good.
And we are here to discuss our Twin Peaks thought of the day for Sunday, February 7th, 2016. So James, let's start with you. What do you think about the new casting that happened this week for Twin Peaks? We have Naomi Watts and we have Tom Sizemore. So let's start with Naomi Watts. How do you feel about her casting in the new series?
Well, I am pleased to hear that she's going to be in it, but it's a little bit tantalizing, sort of, to know, that, but not know who she's going to play. I want to know kind of, is she going to be basically Diane? Is she going to be in the FBI? Because I can't really imagine Naomi Watts playing ordinary townsfellow or townsfolk kind of assistant to Nadine in their new drape runner shop or something, and the many adventures they have. It's just, or or working in the Great Northern or something. It just seems a little bit disingenuous on Showtime's part to sort of keep releasing all these names, but they don't say, "Oh, this is what they're going to be doing." They don't give any suggestion. So it's like it kind of is interesting, but on the other level, it's sort of very frustrating. Other than that, I mean, I'm keen to see what she's playing, but I'm not like flipping, straining at the leash, like, give me Naomi Watts now, because I mean, many people will never forgive her for the film Diana, which was an atrocity on all levels. Never mind the depiction of what happened in it, but I mean, she really, since then, she needs a career boost.
And having a cameo in the Showtime revival of Twin Peaks will do just that, huh?
Well, I don't think it'll be a cameo. I mean, obviously, it'll be more than like 5 minutes or something. But we'll see. There's no need to be that cynical. I mean, I think she's like obviously a good actress, a good actor as a whole, and it bodes well. But I just don't know what role is she going to be playing. I mean, she could be just sort of like a journalist comes into town, and it's all very, what is Glastonbury Grove? And then we get shots of this black-haired woman crawling out of Glastonbury Grove, and oh my God, what's happening? Oh, and just horses start leaping off of boats and all sorts of bloody
Well,
mad
she
shit.
well she is a great actress. I mean, she
She is.
I
She
mean,
is.
she was in Children of the Corn 4. And
Absolutely one of the finest films.
no, what I meant was she was in that movie, and because things weren't working out for her in Hollywood, she was planning to go back to Australia when she got cast in the Mulholland Drive pilot. And, she is sort of like, this wonderful discovery in Mulholland Drive that, she really has Lynch to thank for her career. And so I think her being in Twin Peaks is a way of helping Lynch get another name for the production, as well as a big thank you to him. I also have some other thoughts about this, but before I say those, Christian, tell me what you think. What do you about Naomi Watts casting? Are you pleased?
It's especially when you point out how her career really took off. It's like she's being folded into Twin Peaks, and I agree with James that she can't really be a native resident in my mind. But yeah, so there are other kinds of roles that we could inject into Twin Peaks and stir up some trouble. An investor, something
Mm.
I don't know.
She's the new owner of Dead Dog Farm.
Well, something bigger than that, perhaps a casino.
she
That's a bit obscure, Cameron. I mean, the new owner of Dead Dog Farm. How are they going to get that into the story?
Well, let's see. That's where they'll build the
Dear
casino.
me.
That's where the
I
new
think I think it
One
would
Eye
be
Jacks
good to
is.
see. I would like to see her in just a random scene in the convenience store, and she just comes out with something like, "Animal life."
Wonderful life.
Yeah, well, I
That
mean,
would be,
maybe she's the new Blackie in One Eye Jacks, and they deal in baby laxatives.
yeah, that's definitely a good
Oh, they
idea.
got to think bigger. 25 years later.
Yeah, but one thing that I want to bring up is James
Crystal meth.
James brought up this thing that's been going around, which I think is really interesting, because when Laura Dern got cast, everyone was like, "Oh, this is going to be brilliant," because everyone's been wanting her to play Diane since this first series was on, and now people are saying, "Well, wouldn't it be cool if Naomi Watts played Diane, because then perhaps Lynch could fold Mulholland Drive into Twin Peaks, since Mulholland Drive began its inception as Audrey Horne Goes to Hollywood." Is there a possibility that the Diane in Mulholland Drive is the Diane that Cooper was talking to?
No, I don't think those can be tied together that way.
That's a bit too ridiculous for me, but
you know what, I understand, but in this day and age of the shared cinematic universe and this idea of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. being combined with the Marvel universe and stuff, it's not out of the realm possibility, since Lynch has hinted in the past that because he is the sole creator of a lot of these stuff, that there are similarities. But do you think that Lynch will go that extra step to link some of these other works to this specifically?
That might be more artifice than necessary, that he has other things to put into the work. I mean, it would be a nice callback and we'd enjoy observing it, but maybe there are other things he's got planned.
Oh, I'm sure of it. I'm just throwing that out there as a discussion point.
I think they probably will do. Obviously, there's going to be like a cartoon spin-off of this show, and then there'll be a Naomi Watts action figure, etc. So that's really what I'm sitting here with bated breath waiting for. When that day comes, I think we'll be able to say, does Diane in Twin Peaks relate to Diane in Mulholland Drive, or other things like that. Does Betty in Twin Peaks relate to Betty in Mulholland Drive, for instance? They have different second names, but anyone could just kind of take on a fake name if they were trying to do a sort of, trying to trick the major.
And some people, some artists just like reusing the same names over and over. So
yeah,
it makes sense. But one thing that I want to bring up is Lynch has said in the past that Laura Dern is his favorite actress that he's ever worked with, which has always kind of like thrown me, because I'm like, oh, what about Sheryl Lee? What about Naomi Watts? Obviously, he's worked with Laura Dern a lot. So, and I know he thinks very highly of Sheryl Lee, because obviously, he built a whole movie around her, and a TV series. Obviously, Laura Palmer was created before, but once she got involved, he kept bringing her back. He brought her back as Madeline Ferguson. She's the Good Witch and Wild at Heart. Naomi Watts has only been in 2 of his works, with Rabbits and Mulholland Drive. Obviously, I know she was in Inland Empire as well, but a lot of that was from Rabbits. But here's what's interesting, and this is, I know James is going to get on my case about this, but this is what leads me to think, again, that this might be by choice, not so much by necessity of health, that this might be Lynch's last work, because the idea of bringing Laura Dern, Sheryl Lee, Naomi Watts together for this project seems to be that this whole project is moving towards some sort of closure for Lynch.
A culmination.
Yes.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Well, you mean like a climax?
Well,
a nuclear sex explosion. Because the quantity of very alluring females that are going to be in this show is going to be something for some people to handle. But we've had some great pages.
People could say that about the first series.
No, but in this, it's more. I think there's going to be more, because there's going to be Amanda Seyfried now. Like, she's obviously very, attractive young woman. Naomi Watts is still very attractive. Grace Zabriskie is just plain hot. The Sheryl Lee is still very attractive. Cheryl in Fenn is really, lovely and stuff. These women are all like attractive in their own ways, and especially their personalities, really. And I think that you're not going to get many shows with this kind of level of like almost just sort of wall to wall, hotness. And
But we're leaving out...
I think there's been pages online who've tried to celebrate this. Like there's one particularly grand page called Twin Peaks Freaks. But I mean, I don't know if the answer is just to freak out and say, are all these women's asses too hot to handle? It's more a case of like, what are they going to do in the show? How are they going to behave? Is Shelley going to get off that roof of the car and kick Leo's ass? Is she going to go out and, take the shotgun to, some other abusive male or something? Because, I mean, I think that's always the answer, to fight, fire with fire. And
are you telling me something that I don't know of Leo Johnson? Is Leo Johnson back in the show?
No, I don't know anything about that. But if he's not, I will be unhappy, I must say. Because, he was always one of my favorite characters, to be honest.
But there's one name that you haven't mentioned in this League of Hotness that you are talking about, and that is Heather Graham, which I feel is the most important one.
Well, I don't know.
Central to the plot where we left it.
I mean, I'm not saying important in terms of like Laura Palmer and that type of stuff. I'm saying like if any actress needs to be in the show for the plot to continue.
I have thought that perhaps Annie decided that the convent was a much better place to be after her visit into the lodge, and she just left. Never came back.
I think she may have opted for a much more fulfilling and pointful career and became a stripper. I can just imagine her just twirling around a pole and stuff, and the evil Dale Cooper looking on, and just it'd be.
Well, let me ask you this, because I mean, my mind's playing tricks on me at the moment. I'm fairly certain that when Annie exits the Black Lodge at the end of the series, that she's still in her dress from the Miss Twin Peaks festival, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then in the missing pieces, when she's in the hospital wearing Caroline's dress, I know that's a callback, and it's an interesting callback considering that we don't even see Caroline in Fire Walk with Me. But how did she get from one dress to the other?
I can't remember when she's lying on the floor outside Glastonbury Grove. I think she's got Caroline's dress on there.
She does.
So yeah, but when she's in the lodge, she had the one she was wearing at the.
But I'm just trying to remember. It's early in the morning.
So when she comes out, that's when the transition occurs.
Right. Okay. No, I understand that. I'm just trying to remember.
So it's like she's had a transition as well as Cooper has his transition.
Right.
Thing.
I'm not arguing that. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head if when she comes out of the lodge, when Truman's like, Annie, is Annie wearing Caroline's dress?
Yeah.
She is.
Yeah, because it looks almost. I always thought it was like.
Well, if she is,
on her, it's just the dress pattern.
But if she's wearing Caroline's dress, then why were people freaking out during that shot of her on the gurney in the missing pieces? Her wearing Caroline's dress, wouldn't that just be a given?
Because they didn't notice it, because it was in the dark so much in the episode. I'm not sure. I might be completely wrong. Actually, I need to go back and check. So,
Christian, what do you think?
I think I was about to go check because I don't remember for sure either.
All right.
But I'm not sure if it's like massively important, like when the dress changed. It's more that it did.
Yes.
And it seems to have been purposeful, not
It's not like an accident, like Lynch is just like, oh shit, we've got the wrong dress.
Not like a
we have to cut that scene out, sort of thing.
Right.
No, that's not why, because, you always said, Cameron, that scene was like something that Firewalk with Me almost needed, like this feeling of urgency, and, we've just brought her in from Glastonbury Grove and all this kind of thing. And when you watch it, you're sort of like, yeah, and I can see what you mean for sure, because it's such a well-filmed scene, and the scene with the nurse as well is very well filmed. There's certain...
Yeah, but the problem is that, like, Annie says a line of dialogue, and then the nurse, like, puts her hand in front of Annie's face and then takes the ring. Like, there's no, like... That scene needed to be just, like, a few beats longer, because otherwise it's just... it moves a little too quick.
Well, I think it feels very soapy, whereas...
Yeah.
It does feel like something from an episode of the show rather than... In Firewalk with Me, the way it ended up, we made it more kind of, It felt like a film, but even though I've often said it didn't feel massively cinematic. Yeah. Whereas there were things that were deleted that were more cinematic, like the one where Leyland is approaching the house, and it goes on for a long time, and it's just so well filmed, that scene. The colours, everything about it. and then other parts of the film they look really kind of grungy and sort of almost like a mess, you know.
You know, you are right. It's so dark. Maybe on the Blu-ray, it's a little clearer, but just watching the scene again on YouTube, you can't really make out Annie's dress. But because it's her dress from the Miss Twin Peaks festival was, or a pageant, I should say, was dark. That maybe that's why it is so black.
Dark blue, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe Lynch just decided to change the address for her. Obviously, you know, when she was put in the ambulance or something, they decided to change her address over with another one for some reason. So it's just, you know, as you do.
Exactly.
It doesn't make sense, obviously, but you know.
Yeah, right. Okay, so
Caroline was not even there; she was a spirit, right?
Right. Well, let's talk about the second bit of casting that happened, and that is Tom Sizemore has been added to the cast alongside Jim Belushi and a few others. So, what do we think about Tom Sizemore being added to the cast? I mean, obviously, Tom Sizemore has had a very interesting career. He's been in trouble with the law several times, so to me, I feel like he's someone who's perfect to be in a Lynch vehicle. You know, for a while, if you made a war movie, he was the go-to guy. He showed up in like all of them. For about 5 years.
Has he been in any films with Steven Seagal? Because if he has, that always gets a big thumbs up in my book. You know, I mean, some of those Seagal recent ones, straight to video, are just fantastic pieces of art. Sizemore as well is a very, very good actor. You know, he brings off the impression of being like an ex-drug addict, alcoholic brilliantly. I don't know how he does it. But...
Well, I mean, him playing Scagnetti in Natural Born Killers, I mean, that's almost a Lynch role right there. But let me ask you, I mean, if you're unsure about what Naomi Watts could play, where's Lynch going to put Sizemore? I mean, is he going to be the new owner of the, you know, what was that place called?
On top?
Mohead Motors or whatever from Firewalk with Me?
Mohead Motors. Yeah, hard to say.
Because he's an intense personality.
Yeah. And that's not native.
Intensely in need of drugs.
Well, I mean, like, you know, I can't picture him running the perfume counter at the Horns department store, you know, in charge of the girls.
Not really. I mean, I think that he will be more of a like gangster, obviously, because he's one of these actors who they just inevitably like typecast. You know, and even with Lynch, I mean, he does that. He's like, okay, we need someone like here, you know, a wacky guy, you know, in a wheelchair with, you know, a disease. Get Richard Pryor. You know, he was typecast at the end of his career. Lynch does this with everyone, you know.
Do you think Sizemore will play a molester of some sort?
Probably, yes. Because both also, I guess he played the mechanic in Natural Born Killers. Then Lynch was like, oh, okay, I'll get him for Lost Highway.
Exactly.
Just as Jim Belushi was in that thing, the Oliver Stone Wild Palms, and he played like someone whose wife he thinks is having, you know, adultery and all this business, and he goes all paranoid. And then the same thing happens again in Lost Highway, basically. I mean, and there are even certain scenes in the
So basically, Lost Highway is a culmination of Wild Palms,
the James and Evelyn story.
The James and Evelyn story.
Oh,
and
Natural Born Killers.
And Natural Born Killers.
And probably Angel's Dance as well, which had Jim Belushi and Cheryl Lee in it. On the page, Welcome to Twin Peaks proudly put it up, and everybody just completely ignored the post. Like, okay, so what? It was just a film that no one watched in the 90s, you know. I don't know. Do these films get better with time or not?
I don't know. I think my favorite Cheryl Lee performance outside of the Twin Peaks canon.
True Dark.
No, yeah. No, I was going to say, is, you know, obviously she's great in Backbeat, but for anyone who hasn't seen the movie Bliss and are in love with Cheryl Lee's naked body, that's the movie to watch.
Yeah, but Cameron, you can't just say the whole film's good because she's naked in it. That's like me saying, you know, rating everyone on their hotness. And by the way, in case people watching think I was being serious, that was not serious. And it's known fact that Lucy Moran is the hottest person in the whole of Twin Peaks. So, you know, she's just like so, you know, sultry.
All right, James. So, why don't you tell us now about the shooting you're hearing about going on for the new Twin Peaks series? Where's the location, and what is being reported?
Well, I don't really say the actual location for people in case they go, and also because I didn't really digest all that, and I don't live in LA, so
I didn't mean the address. I mean, what is the building?
It's a hospital, basically, and they've got Carl McLachlan there, who, of course, plays Agent Cooper, in case you didn't know. Also, Jim Belushi.
Wait, hold it. We're on like our 110th episode.
No, but I'm just trying to get people.
If people don't know,
viewers now.
If people don't know that Kyle McLachlan,
make sure your kids tune in for this, or children. Anyone from the age of maybe 5. This is suitable viewing, and just introduce them to Twin Peaks, and kind of get it on, have some fun.
All right, so Kyle's there. Who else is there?
Jim Belushi is there, playing, presumably, I'm making a wild guess, either someone in the FBI or someone dodgy, like a gangster. Right. I don't know.
I honestly don't know. But Sizemore is there as well, right?
Sizemore, we can only make a guess that he's like... We basically decided he's going to be a gangster, but that could all be completely untrue, and Belushi and Sizemore could be playing FBI people. We don't know. Anything's possible.
So here's what I hear. I hear... Okay, listen. I hear Kyle, Sizemore, hospital. Last thing we see in the missing pieces is the hospital. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm just throwing this out there.
Yeah.
I think Cooper is going back to the hospital for whatever reason to maybe get Annie's new address or whatever like that. And I think Sizemore might be Bob in the mirror.
Oh. Maybe.
All right, but James, what are you hearing is going on?
That's my idea about it is different in that no one goes back to a hospital 25 years later to ask for Annie's address.
I don't know. I'm just throwing something out there.
But no, what I think is basically it's related to the shaking up business. A whole lot of shakings going on and stuff. And obviously, I think that the Jim Belushi character or the one by Sizemore, played by Sizemore, have had some kind of incident where there was possibly a shootout shot and there was somebody either injured or somebody had a shaking on syndrome scene.
Now, you're not kidding, right? You're saying that you have heard reporting that there was a
No, there is genuinely some kind of shootout scene.
Right.
I know that there are gangsters involved in the season.
There's gangsters involved in this season?
Yeah. Italian. No, they're not Italian, sorry, Irish. And that makes sense with somebody like Sizemore and Belushi as well. You could imagine them as kind of that sort of ilk.
All right, stop there. Christian, why on earth would Lynch and Frost be bringing in Irish gangsters into Twin Peaks?
Why not?
You have to bring some group in. It's so far away from everything else. Somebody investing, somebody trying to move in on the territory, because they're so slow and backwards in time and relaxed.
Yeah, but do you think that... I could be wrong, but just the way they're shooting this show... Do you think they're just shooting all over the place to kind of keep people away from a lot of the locations? Or do you think that this Twin Peaks isn't really going to be in Twin Peaks, but more of a globe-trotting adventure?
Yeah, I don't think any of us really want that.
Around the world in 80 days.
Keep it all in Twin Peaks, maybe a little Flash somewhere else, but I wouldn't understand the world outside of Twin Peaks in that show. It's different.
Well, we already have the desert location. We know we're going back to the Fat Trout trailer park with Carl.
Okay, yeah.
Right? So obviously
that's supposed to be the new one, and it's actually moved to Twin Peaks. It's called the new Fat Trout trailer park.
Okay.
I think it's going to be set in a more affluent town, similar to how North Bend and Snoqualmie has this new affluent development there. This is why we've got a character like Amanda Seyfried coming in. Although, I don't know, I mean, she may be living in the trailer park. But there will be other characters who live a more kind of affluent life than was depicted originally in Twin Peaks. I think, it focused more on like people like Shelley and Leo. They were supposed to be sort of pretty, well, not, I wouldn't say like white trash, but they were pretty bad. Well, they were quite nice people, but they lived in a rough kind of area, and it was a bit.
But James, do you think that the majority of the show is going to take place in Twin Peaks, or do you think we're going to be jumping all over?
Not all of it. No, I think that it'll be like maybe scenes here and there peppered throughout it that are relating, obviously, to the FBI or.
I mean, are we going to get? Are we getting flashbacks? Is that what some of these new scenes are? Are we actually going to?
I don't know. I have no idea because I mean, I'm not sure how flashbacks would work, but
video cassette.
They probably will have it like building up to Cooper returning to the town, and then there's got to be something that brings him back there, other than the fact that he just wants to find Annie or kind of go in Glastonbury Grove or something. I mean, it's got to be kind of plausible, hasn't it? If he's literally still working for the FBI now.
I mean, is the first episode going to end with Naomi Watts as a journalist, hunting for the mysterious Agent Cooper and finally finding him at the top of a cliff with a robe on, Doug style?
Yes.
And when he turns around, Diane holds out Cooper's dictaphone.
Yeah.
Hands it to him.
And then she plays it and it's going backwards, and it says "Animal Life."
I'm thinking of a space for a role. Who's speaking for the Woods now? I mean, we had the log lady. She was connected to something. We couldn't say all of what it meant, but it was large, and she was an important connection. So
this gangster stuff could be related to the Woods somehow. Couldn't
I
it?
get nervous. I get nervous about this gangster stuff. I know that Lynch
I don't think it's going to be like the
gangster
stuff.
It's
not going to be like The Godfather or something. No.
I know exactly what it's going to be like. It's going to be like that fat guy in Mulholland Drive. That's the kind of gangster stuff we're going to get. Or we're going to get another Mr. Eddie,
kind of ridiculous, the way Lynch shows it in a kind of semi-comical way, or just ridiculously brutal, and sort of you don't know how to react. You're just like, what the hell's going on?
But it's interesting, Christian, you're talking about who speaks for the Woods. So here's the question. Okay, it's 25 years later, right?
Yeah.
And we know that Ben Horne has had a change of heart for a long period of time, but who knows if that blast to the head delivered by Doc Hayward into the fireplace, if that reverted Ben Horne back to his previous state, right? And let's say it did. So 25 years later, that says to me that the Ghostwood estates are up now.
Yeah, I mean, what's to be developed? There's money to be made. Somebody's going to try to make that happen.
So do you think that the Ghostwood is... I mean, I hope we don't, get, pulled into a thing of trades and tariffs and stuff,
What I mean, you interviewed Piper Laurie, and I mean, I think she's like a very good actress, but it's just difficult to imagine where is she going to be in there now, because to see a scene with her and Ben Horne now would be like really good, with Catherine Martell and I don't know, Jerry in there somewhere, and also Sylvia Horne and Johnny, etc. I mean, but to get Piper Laurie back in there, I mean, she really wanted to do it. She said to you, didn't she, in her interview? So. And in fact, funnily enough, the film Tim was showing here last night from 1979 with Mel Gibson, and she was really good in that, kind of playing a younger Catherine Martell almost. It's just I don't know. I mean, she was a likable character, but those scenes I like the way her character developed, the Pearl Lakes business and stuff like that. That's what.
But James, do you think Ghostwood Estates will play a role in the new series?
Yeah, I think that maybe someone like Catherine Martell could plausibly have taken over or something. Maybe Ben gave it to her. I don't think he would just revert back to his old,
Somehow I don't think this new series. Somehow I don't think this new series is going to be about saving the Pine Weasel.
No,
I don't think so.
I'd be interested in the border between the forest and the estate. As the buildings that there's
and the reason why I even bring this up is because obviously that shows
May the forest be with you, that whole business.
But it shows the passage of time. But I'm also referring to the last episode where, in a close-up, Agent Cooper is saying Ghostwood, and that's when we start piecing together this idea that Ben Horton's idea of the Ghostwood Estates almost subconsciously is being tied into the Black Lodge.
Well, I mean, I have an interpretation of that entrance in the final episode. I believe that there was a tree in the center where the oil pool is, and it was cut. And then what happens is the outer roots rot and feed the sycamore trees that grew up. And of course, they have open access to the sun now because the tree is missing from the canopy. Mm. So that literally is Ghostwood right there.
And it makes sense to some degree. 13, is seen as an unlucky number by some, or lucky for some, I don't know. But I mean, 13 trees sounds more sort of. 12 just seems to be like it's signifying the passing of time, and this is of course where we go back to like 25 years later. But
it's more symmetrical if that's what he's going for.
But also don't forget that in the episode, well, the problem is that I know it's 2 episodes, but the way I first saw it, obviously the last 2 episodes were put together as a Sunday night movie of the week when it first aired. So I'm thinking of the episode where Annie and Cooper are dancing, right? And the giant shows up and he's like, no, don't let her go for... I keep saying the Miss Twin Peaks Festival, but it's the Miss Twin Peaks pageant.
Yeah.
But there's that shot, right, of Bob coming out of the lodge at the end, right?
Hand reaching out.
Hand reaching out, and then he kind of comes out. But in that first far shot... when the light hits the tree, if you pause that shot, you will see that the lighting is specifically that of a witch's face.
Oh. So you've got to freeze the composition and really look at it.
You don't even have to really look at it. Freeze it and just look, and you'll notice the lighting is a witch's face. Mm. And then Bob comes out of that.
As if summoned out. As if the witch was helping draw him out.
Maybe. I mean, it's a little touch that, I mean, if you catch it, you catch it. But to me, I'm like, is that just like, obviously it's, dark things are coming, right? So, and, we really didn't get into the whole Garmonbozia thing until the movie, but, yeah, and then they bring up the fact that Ghostwood and stuff like that. I mean, do you think there is an element of witchcraft going on here as well? In terms of like movie witchcraft, obviously not Wiccan stuff, or do you think, it is the supernatural alien thing of them coming from outer space from a planet of cream corn?
Oh, certainly not alien. I don't know. I lose my train of thought there. Sorry.
Probably relates back to if you look at what Tom Sizemore was doing in 1991, then Lynch was probably inspired by that, I think. But on a serious level, there is an element of witchcraft in Twin Peaks because we see things like the one-armed man in the deleted scene with the 12 candles, which are obviously supposed to be like the 12 trees, and he's doing, this kind of reverse firewalk with me summoning of Bob, like he wants to speak to Bob, and he wants to save Laura, but he wants to summon Bob in some way, like this kind of Bob, are you there? This business.
But isn't it something that you've mentioned before too, James, that when Firewalk with Me was being made, you read that Lynch was going to be using a lot of satanic imagery?
Well, no, the paper just described it as like this film is about a ring of evil and this kind of thing. I don't know if this is just somebody whether this was publicity by the publicist Gay Pope who was working on it, or it was a good name for a publicist then. Gay Pope, spelled gay, Gaye. And, obviously there's things that you could look into that you could call satanic within a lot of aspects of Twin Peaks. You know, Bob is obviously supposed to be a devilish character, and you know, touched by the hand of the devilish one, and all this business. And then we've discussed. I think Christian was mentioning one time we were talking about the arm coming off and stuff, and how he managed to do that, which is an interesting thing, really. I mean, you don't just get an axe and then chop your arm off. I mean, he probably was in a car crash or something like the real actor. So I don't know. There's a lot of satanic stuff in all of it.
I know what I was thinking there is that I'm constantly fascinated by the specificity of elements and objects and materials. It doesn't happen in other shows, but I'm making a periodic table of all of the distinct kinds of substances and that get a specific moment. Plaid, Formica table, things like that. And thing is, if you just go up a little bit from that, you get to this witchcraft where the objects have more power because of their specific nature and how you combine them. So those candles, it's not like you're into drawing big chalk diagrams of pentagrams and things like that. It's a very light touch. The same way, initially, the only proof of the supernatural was that Sarah and Cooper had seen the same person in their visions, but it was.
But could you say that's the same as Laura and Cooper having the same dream?
It's so reserved compared to any other show that would want to go and establish one step further. This is how it works. I mean, it just, that's how it strikes me.
Well, I don't know. It's not that reserved, and I hope it's not that reserved in the new show in a way, because sometimes I liked all the stuff with the haloperidol, and, you know, like, he went boing, 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 and, you know, and Gordon Cole's saying he's got to inject the one-armed man and all this business. I like that kind of stuff, and that's what sometimes the second season, it went on and it kind of lacked that aspect, because we didn't have characters like Mike anymore, or...
Well, don't you... Okay, let me just pause.
Obviously, I want to see Mike in the new show, you know.
Well, let me just pause you there for a second, James. Sorry. Christian, wasn't it surprising to you that after Cooper interviews the one-armed man in bed, and, you know, he says, you know, a golden circle, and you have all the information you need and all that stuff, and then you see the one-armed man laying on the pillow, kind of sweating, and that's it until the movie.
Well, I think I've seen that scene, and okay, this is not the one where he's escaping out of the window. And
no, I'm talking about this is in the Tim Hunter episode 16.
Then he's and when we see him in the movie, that's the past. So really, we saw him last in that bed.
Right, and so my feeling has always been that he died or went into a coma or something, because I mean, they never even mention him again. Even in the final episode, you would think they would be like, you know, get Philip Gerard, let's go.
Yeah.
Because I mean,
it'd
it'd be one thing if like the actor was like, "Oh, I don't want to do this anymore," and he left. But he came back for the movie, and he's come back for like the documentaries to talk about it. So why would you write out that character, or at least not bring him back for the final episode when they're going to storm the Black Lodge?
I mean, his experience is all so relating to Bob and Laura. Now that that's all gone, how does he reconnect to Twin Peaks, or what is?
Well,
he's a shoe salesman.
His most important role was obviously selling shoes, and since clearly there was no massive need for shoes.
But
after Bob was kind of captured and then escaped.
Yes, but in the final episode, we get the 10-second callback of Ronette Pulaski.
We get Heidi.
Yes.
Yeah, but what would Mike have done there? Just stand there like going
No,
on
but
about...
wouldn't you think that they would, like that, like Jerry says, does he have to look at us like we're like we're a dog or something like that, or a bone or whatever it was.
Yeah, but he was just a small character.
I know, but you can almost imagine Sheriff Truman walking Mike on a leash to find the Black Lodge in the woods, him sniffing it out.
If you give him the right combination of drugs.
I think it would have been better if James Marshall had been in that episode, which he wasn't, unfortunately. And he'd roared back into the town with Mike on the back of his bike, like, "Yee-haw! Let's get Cooper's ass."
Hold on tight with one arm.
And then it ended in a happy way. I wanted a happy ending, basically, with the credits rolling up really fast, like, and sort of some good music from that era coming on, like 1991, maybe a Whitney Houston song or something.
I think it would have been great if when Donna got the postcard, it was from both James and Mike on the way to San Francisco, and the picture on the postcard would have been like that set shot of James James on the bike with Ray Wise behind him. I think that would have been great if Mike was on
the Firewalk with Me set, where Ray Wise was mounting James Hurley on the bike. That was one hell of a. That would have been one hell of a scene if we'd had that filmed. I mean, I want to.
That wasn't a scene in the movie.
Is he your lover? I'm going to get on his bike.
Well, he was on.
Laura, what's your father doing?
Leland was on the trail until Laura abandoned James and spared him from.
I know. What would he have done to James? I can't even imagine. It would have been horrific.
I want to see James Hurley being attacked by Waldo.
The ghost of Waldo?
No, Waldo was alive at that point.
Oh, at that point. Oh, yeah. If
James had gone to the flipping cabin and saved Laura, everything would have been okay. But instead, he just went off roaring down the road like a crazy person.
I don't think so. I think that Leland still would have killed Ronette.
Well, I mean, obviously Mike stopped that by throwing in a ring.
But one thing, we're kind of on topic.
Although that was cut in at the last minute, it wasn't actually filmed initially. Then they did an insert. So,
now this is a little bit off topic, but we're talking about this scene, so I just want to bring this up. I always loved it how in the series it was established that Leland and Jacques fought outside the cabin, and Leo took off. But in the movie, Leland hits Jacques over the head with a bottle, and then Leo takes off. And it's interesting because that is something that doesn't have to match what Cooper and Albert thought of the case, because either way you get to the same conclusion. Jacques is on the ground and Leo takes off.
Yeah.
I always thought that was.
But did you think that was realistic behaviour from Leyland? Would he really have hit him over the head with that liquor bottle?
Well, how did he kill Teresa? With a blow, similarly struck in the head.
From a lead pipe in the conservatory.
It depends on what you see when you freeze the frame.
You think it's an axe handle, so...
Yeah, I tried to really tweak the contrast and find the shape is basically the only thing you can really establish. And it has a distinctive kind of turn at the end of the handle, which you see on axe handles, so as part of not having it fly out of your hands.
But the sound effect is of a pipe hitting Teresa's head.
Well, this morning I went to a sound effects website where they sell them for inclusion in movies or whatever, and I got the sound of a pipe versus a bat hitting a person. And I also clipped the sections out from the movie. But I haven't really sat down and confronted what they sound like. I mean, it does sound...
Now, you could, if you're a hipster, you could probably make like a dance track or something out of that sound. And
dear. No,
put in like, Animal Life, and people would be like raving to it non-stop in some New York hipster kind of club or something. Like, get in there, man, let's rock. Let's rock. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure about the specifics of it. It's more like, I think with the film and with Lynch's style, he's not that bothered about what kind of literally hit Teresa, and obviously it was supposed to be brutal and like quick. So you don't use a bloody bit of an axe handle, even if it's a fairly big one. You would use something really heavy like a pipe if you're, in Leyland's shoes in that moment. I mean, just put yourself in his place.
Well,
what would I do in this situation? Choose your own adventure,
Well, he does own
I'm a good guy. I just want to get out of this bloody situation that Teresa's put me in.
No. He does own an axe in the deleted scenes, but it's not the one that we see in the picture. It's different kind
So
of
you're
design.
suggesting now that Leyland was a massive axe collector? He
Well,
had like an arsenal of axes that he just randomly. Like, how far was Deer Meadow supposed to be from Twin Peaks? So he just drove in his car with like. Oh, I don't know.
Well, the thing is, though,
It's
is
just
that
really confusing.
okay,
Chris.
in the pilot episode, Agent Cooper talks about Teresa Banks living in this town that's on the southern part of the state. So
That's a long way.
that says to me that we're hours and hours away, to the point that they in Twin Peaks never even heard about her murder.
That's why he chose it, because he wanted to do something that was secret, didn't he?
And that's the thing, is like, but for Leland to be able to get down there multiple times says to me that either Ben Horn has business down there or around that area, because
in that direction.
why would Leland even be that far down the state?
Sure, but that's plausible enough, because I mean, in one of the deleted scenes in Fire War with Me, we see Teresa get, she knows Laura's number, so she rings the Leyland using that number, doesn't she?
Well, that's the other thing, right?
He says it's your little party girl,
right? So
and that's when he's like, really starts getting angry,
right? And that's why he kills her in the movie. But what's interesting is that if you go by the fact that that's hours and hours away, then why is Laura and Ronette able to travel down there?
I don't know. I suppose they could have gone with like a trucker or somebody, because we see in another deleted scene, Laura getting in a truck.
Right, but is there a possibility that the motel location in the movie is maybe like a halfway point between Deer Meadow and Twin Peaks?
But
that could be
security. I mean, if he needs to establish a distance from Twin Peaks to get up to his shenanigans, and why not, have the motel at that point? Yeah, it is quite a distance. I was thinking that if you like the Secret Diary, and I do, there's a lot of information about how Laura would get around and relate to men and much older and get favors or travel with them.
But we know that Lynch didn't read that diary, so
yeah, true enough.
I don't know. I mean, it is interesting because in the movie it kind of presents Deer Meadow like far away from Twin Peaks, right? And yet, But if obviously, the new question, maybe the new layer of mystery, James, is how did Laura and Ronette meet Teresa Banks?
There's a possibility.
Well, how did they meet her initially?
Yes.
Leo?
Through Fleshworld, probably, or through Jack. I think Jack would have known all these kind of women working as prostitutes and stuff. I think.
Right.
More than Leo. I don't think Leo was like organized enough or whatever. I mean, he was just more like a,
But I don't think Jacques and Leo had dealings with Teresa Banks.
No, maybe not that we. Wait, Jacques was aware of her.
I think basically it was just like road trip, for Ronette and Laura. They're young, they're sort of trying new things and all this kind of business. I mean, they're only 17, right? And they're supposed to be doing that kind of stuff. I mean, it's pretty.
But I know that Laura's mom is, smoking or sedated on the couch, but and Leland's kind of every which way. But I think Ronette's family would have noticed if their daughter was coming home in the middle of the night.
No, I know, but it was in the day when she was to the, the Blue Diamond Motel or whatever it's supposed to be called.
Right, but if we're saying that the motel is perhaps halfway between that and Deer Meadow, then we're talking it's a 6-hour round trip, plus the sex.
You see, I think these distances...
How do we know Laura didn't go in her car? Because she had a car. So.
I think these distances are elastic and meaningless, because it's like the way the population of the town seems to change depending on what's needed at the time. If you have to have a department store, you're talking about something much larger than the 5,000. But then other times...
No, but the show has... I mean, I know it was supposed to be 5,000, but from the pilot episode, it says 51,000.
No, it does. It does say, but the way that they're written, the isolation, it honestly, there are times where I feel like it's specifically a different size, and I'm comfortable with that. It's sort
This
of part of the magic, and so the traveling distances also, for me, it's meant to be foggy.
well, I don't. I mean, obviously, I don't really personally think about it, not much, but I think that you
Or
know,
or is it just another thing of Lynch playing around with time in Fire Walk with Me versus the series? Because
Well,
not really. I think it's an inconsistency. I think it's a genuine inconsistency, that one, because um, they wanted Deer Meadow to be quite distant from Twin Peaks, but not that distant, not as distant as it was suggested in the show. So they basically kind of changed it. Really,
well, I went
that's
to
my
Google.
opinion.
I went to
I
Google
genuinely
Earth.
think that Lynch is not trying to be some kind of poet, like, oh, I'm playing with the elasticity of time.
No, no, no.
You know,
It's just about what you don't bother to reconcile, what you leave loose.
but that's basically what I mean. So we agree, I think.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm thinking
yeah. I
of the
mean,
maps
Lynch
of,
basically left it loose. Yeah,
if you think about the maps of the town,
mm,
uh,
the
I've,
Valcave.
I went to Google Earth and looked at cities in that part of Washington State, trying to find anything 5,000 size, and really there isn't. You have to travel a bit out of the actual location to get to somewhere that's that big. But when you then look down at the city grid, you realize that Twin Peaks is much smaller.
Hmm.
mm-hmm.
I mean, that's
Oh yeah, it was definitely
400
planned as a
people
small town, but
in that map. So, uh, and at times, like I say, if you think about it critically, it doesn't really fit.
All right, there's one thing I want to bring up here, just since we're on this topic, and that is in the pilot, Cooper says that Twin Peaks is 5 miles south of the Canadian border, 12 miles west of the state line, okay, which is Idaho. So if we're that close to the border, then that explains why everyone's able to go over to Canada more easily. Obviously, One-Eye Jacks, that type of thing. But if they're 5 miles south of the Canadian border, and Deer Meadow is supposed to be at the southern part of the state, which is like Oregon, then that's how far, and that's probably an 8-hour drive straight down. Okay, and I know we're talking about the elasticity of time, but I'm just saying that, like, for anybody thinking that Twin Peaks is next to Seattle just because Snoqualmie is near Seattle is wrong. Just saying that for Leland to go all the way down there and Laura and Ronette to go all the way down there, it doesn't make any sense. So I think Laura and Ronette, the motel has to be the halfway point. There's no way high school girls are going to the border of Oregon to turn around and go home for one sex escapade. They wouldn't even pay for the gas.
Yeah, that's not practical.
well,
I
you've
mean,
obviously got. I mean, you've got more insight into this kind of thing than me, but I think that you know, I never, I've never actually tried doing this, so I would try this kind of road trip myself just to see if it was possible. Really,
Well, you
it would
should.
definitely be hours and hours.
I'm not sure if I want to actually dress up as Laura Palmer and then check in at the Blue Diamond Motel, etc. But because
If
in real life, that's actually in North Bend, isn't it, or Snoqualmie, wherever
Mhm.
So
well,
I
if
was thinking about going to that festival sometime and then doing that maybe.
well, if
But
you do, make sure to film it because we'd all love to see that.
it's more of a private thing, Cameron. But I would release it, as maybe a leak, a fake leak video like Kim Kardashian, etc. And
I
it's
mean,
got me, me and Walter Olkovics in a room, up to all manner of nonsense.
All right, James. So for our final topic, I know you wanted to talk a little bit more about the supernatural aspect of Twin Peaks. So why don't you take it from here?
Well, specifically, I always considered the character of, since I just mentioned him, of Jacques Renault to have some kind of supernatural underpinning, and the fact that he was killed by Leyland, squashing his head with a pillow, that's always something that I would like to see brought up again in this new show.
How is that
But
supernatural?
I just feel like Jack had this sort of otherworldly presence, and when you see him in
That's
Firewalk
called
with Me, he's like,
Scientology.
I am the
Great
Wend or
event.
something. I am the Great Wend and all this. It's like, what the hell's going on?
Well,
This
because
guy is like
1992.
Aleister Crowley or something.
No,
It's just,
1992. We're still in the heyday of Cheers. I think that was a nod to George Wendt.
Eh,
why would they be making a nod
Because
to
Jacques Renault
Cheers?
always reminded me of Norm.
That's a bit too much for me. That's like saying Lynch got the name for his character in Louis C.K. of Jack Doll from Black Doll, this kind of food you can get, sort of like lentils. Because we know he likes quinoa and stuff. But anyway, going back to the supernatural and all that kind of Garmonbozia aspect, Lynch has this tendency to make things that are supernatural into either a foodstuff or, I don't know, things like mirror-reflected demons, flashing light symbolism,
Okay, now remember, all of this started in Twin
all of
Peaks.
these things.
Before Twin Peaks, his evil that he showed in film was mostly like realistic evil, right? You have the abuser in Elephant Man, Frank Booth. Twin Peaks is when when his work became supernatural.
but
More.
he would have gone with Ronnie Rocket, and that would have been completely different from what came before in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
I think
That
there were
script.
some elements of Ronnie Rocket that were used in Twin Peaks instead, but some of the
Yeah,
stuff
well,
to do with some of the ideas to do with probably the Michael J. Anderson character, since Ronnie Rocket was supposed to be Michael J. Anderson, and then that's where the Red Room came out of a little bit. And I mean, the question I'm getting to basically is, do you think they're just going to kind of recycle the same old stuff of like flashing, strobe lights and this sort of, whatever you want to call it, like effect of lights flashing on and off and people, running around in the Red Room or Garmonbozia? Are they just going to keep doing the same thing in this new sort of chapter,
Well, I
or
think it's hard to know because
will they do something new?
and they have to walk the line, James, because you don't want to do the same old thing, and yet you have to acknowledge that this is still the same universe,
Right.
right? So
But
yes,
will they? The thing I have a problem with is there's things like Owl Cave, and obviously Lynch, he'd have nothing to do with that idea. But then he, instead of going like back to Owl Cave or showing, I don't know, Laura and Ronette going in Owl Cave or something in Fire Walk with Me, he just uses one little symbol from the map and all that kind of business. The thing that Cooper starts drawing, and
see,
like a sigil, and then puts it on a ring, and then this is just sort of in there in Fire Walk with Me. I mean, obviously somebody said that the ring will pop up again in this new show, of course. That's a known fact, but
I think they have to address it.
I mean, it will. The ring will be in there, will be inserted. But I mean, we don't want to know necessarily where will it be inserted.
Well, that's the thing that you just said something that made my mind go crazy, and that is
about the ring piece. And
I'm talking about. I would have loved to have seen a scene in Fire Walk with Me of Laura taking one of her Johns to Owl Cave to have sex, and
what's a John?
A guy who
Clyde.
hires a prostitute.
Oh, okay, right.
And while they're making out, having sex, whatever like that, she sees the ring like on the ground in the cave. I think something
I
like
thought you
that.
meant she took John Renault in there. John
No, he
Renault.
might not fit.
He had a very convincing. No, he wasn't as big as Jack. He was more slimline and kind of a nice guy with frizzy blonde hair and kind of like very convincing French accent. Like,
Well, Michael Parks went
I don't
on.
know.
Michael Parks went on to have a pretty big collaboration with Quentin Tarantino.
True.
So
What
James,
you mean?
I'm thinking that some of the things you're mentioning are sort of timeless. The lights, the electricity, that's still with us and part of our lives. But the other category that comes to me is the food substances. Some of those things that we see, it's the condition that they're in that's more important, perhaps. Like the creamed corn, I looked at that and I go, I don't know whether that's good creamed corn or bad creamed corn. I haven't had it. So I looked online and we saw pictures of the same thing and people saying, this is terrible.
No,
So
that is a delicious foodstuff.
depends entirely on how it's prepared.
I just eat it cold from the can.
No.
When I'm camping in the woods, I just down a whole can and go, rock and roll. And then there's nothing like, eating cream corn in the woods.
And urinating in the woods.
No, I don't do any urinating in the woods. I take a chemical toilet with me, Cameron. There's no defecating in the woods either.
So Christian, you are a true Twin Peaks fan if you're seeking out the cream corn.
Oh yeah, no, I think I really kind of got to somewhere there when I realized
maybe
that
you
the
bought more
grandson.
quality, like kind of generic brand or something like Acme cream corn, but I only buy the finest made by Green Giant, the Jolly Green Giant, a friend of Michael Jackson. He had statues of him in his house and stuff. And another one of these obvious connections between Michael Jackson and Lynch. They're both fans of the cream corn.
And the Elephant Man.
Which is a stand-in for semen.
Well, that's the thing, is that when I realized that the grandson and the grandmother are parallel to his original film, The Grandmother, the boy is wearing the same suit, and in that short film, the grandmother is grown from a seed, so people are seeds.
That's just having a laugh. I mean, do you think they fire with me, though? I mean, sorry for just interrupting, but Michael J. Anderson, maybe he's never forgiven Lynch for making him sup, like pure semen from a spoon. I mean,
what other material?
Because I know that Lynch had a hernia explosion during the making of Fire Walk with Me, or the soundtrack, when Angelo was doing Badalamenti was doing the kind of Real Indication singing. He said that it felt like a light bulb blew in his stomach because he was laughing so hard at Angelo is singing, doing the Real Indication and all that business, And was he just taking the piss out of Michael J. Anderson? I mean, just, all right, get this cream corn here and, eat it. I mean, what the hell was in that cream corn? What had Lynch done? Had he just been, for a 5-minute break somewhere in his trailer?
So you asked that question.
And then Lynch comes out.
James, you asked that question. I ask, what is the point of having Leland Palmer in the Black Lodge at the end, leaning forward and swinging across the floor? That was the point of that.
That was blood on the dance floor.
I could not come up with anything there either.
That was another joke on Lynch's part. He was just like, okay, Ray, we're going to rig you up now. What? Why? Well, I just want to do it. Because they had the rig there from the Angel, obviously, right? So they were just trying something else, I think.
And then they did the Leland Palmer POV shot of him raising up into the air. And it's
just weird. I don't know why they did it, but it was was that too weird for weird's sake, or did it have a meaning? Was it maybe Leyland's soul ascending more towards the light and that kind of idea?
But do you think
look to the light?
Yeah, but also Fire Walk With Me adds to the fact of, you talked about Philip Gerard and how do you take the arm off and everything, but Fire Walk With Me, flat out in your face, and Lynch is not, usually not one for spelling things out, flat out says, I am the arm.
Yeah.
It's
you're in the other space. He can be more direct there. It's
right. But at the end, when they say, I want your Garmonbosia, Lynch goes so far to put parentheses, pain and sorrow.
Yeah, weird way to do it.
And then also at the beginning, when you see the floating body in the river, to keep people from being confused, he has to throw on the words Teresa Banks.
That's Chris's experience of eating Garmonbosia induced pain and sorrow when he was trying the cream corn. I hope you went straight back to the supermarket.
But isn't it weird though that Fire Walk With Me is a film of, it's polarizing. It has, a lot of little things that you have to notice in order to fully grasp and be able to know the series. And yet there's things like Teresa Banks, pain and sorrow, I am the arm. There's some blatant, like, just like, do you get it? Do you get it? Are you
Yeah,
following
but I think
us?
sometimes they missed out on the ending. We could have had Cooper like at the end levitating, and then Laura just watching him, and then as he levitated, he started doing an imitation of Michael J. Anderson's dance, you know, and then we had that music come on.
Well, I thought maybe he could dance
That would have been good.
angel like Barry Munchausen.
That would have been nice, and also maybe if the angel had just been naked, then that would have given him, you know, more box office success.
And not
Because I mean, the same year, and was also exposing a flange, like in Basic Instinct. That was a very, very successful film at the time, and I think Lynch missed out. Misjudged. It would have been good if she'd just been crossing her leg at one point, and we saw a beautiful glimpse of Beaver.
From the angel?
Laura's angel. No, not Laura's angel.
That's sacrilegious.
Hold it. James is... I think you're confusing David Lynch with Ken Russell.
Well, they are similar. They're a bit similar, aren't they? Lynch has done some pretty outrageous things in some of his films. Come on. I mean...
Yeah, but he's not going so far to do beaver shots of an angel.
That's nice. I mean, H.D. Cooper could also be naked and fully erect.
We got that in Showgirls.
And in Blue Velvet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was Semi. Sorry, Semi.
All right, I think I'm going to just conclude this. This is either going to get more entertaining if we keep going, or just go so off the rails that you'll never watch.
Because
the
Carl
episode.
McLaughlin could only get so aroused by Dennis Hopper. But I mean, you know, we've all been there. I mean,
thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Please don't be afraid to come back.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, James, any last thoughts before we go?
Well, I just think that obviously a lot of these issues need to be addressed by Lynch and Frost, and since we know that they're watching this on a weekly basis now and taking notes, I hope they're kind of hard at work, thinking seriously about some of the suggestions, and may the forest be with you.
All I know is if Tom Sizemore is playing Bob and Naomi Watts shows up as Diane, as well as the Diane from Mulholland Drive, this will be one crazy fucked up show.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you very much for watching. We will see you next time. Take care.